The impossible discovery Admiral Corax stood on the command bridge of the Valdorian flagship Eternal Dominance, his forearms crossed behind his back as he stared at the holographic display showing the star system ahead. The blue-scaled Valdorian had served the Empire for over 3 centuries, and in all that time, he had never encountered a more routine assignment. Survey a newly discovered species, assess their threat level, and either integrate them into the Empire or eliminate them. If they proved troublesome, the Valdorian Empire had perfected this process over 2 millennia. Their vast fleets patrolled the galaxy, bringing order and structure to countless worlds. Every species they encountered followed predictable patterns of development. First came primitive chemical rockets, then basic fusion drives, followed by crude faster-than-light travel, and finally the development of proper military vessels. It was a timeline that never varied, written into the very laws of physics themselves. "Admiral," called out Navigation Officer Ilex from her station, "we're approaching the edge of the system they call Sol. Initial scans show the species has achieved basic interplanetary travel, with settlements on multiple worlds in their home." "System." Corax nodded, unsurprised. This matched the profile perfectly. The humans, as they called themselves, had been transmitting radio signals for less than 2 centuries. According to every model the Empire used, they should be barely capable of reaching their neighboring planets, let alone posing any threat to galactic civilization. "What about their military capabilities?" Corax asked Dr. Zenth, the expedition's chief scientist. The elderly Valdorian had gray scales and moved slowly, but his mind remained sharp after 400 years of studying primitive species. Dr. Zenth consulted his datapad, his large black eyes reflecting the soft glow of the screen. "Exactly as predicted, Admiral. They have approximately 60 vessels scattered throughout their system. Most appear to be cargo haulers or research ships. Their largest military vessels are roughly 1/10 the size of our smallest patrol craft. Armaments? Primitive kinetic weapons and basic energy shields. Their power output suggests they're still using crude fusion reactors. By our calculations, a single one of our destroyers could handle their entire fleet." Corax allowed himself a small smile. Another routine contact operation. The humans would be given the standard choice: join the Empire as a client species, or face the consequences of refusing galactic order. Most chose cooperation once they saw a demonstration of superior Valdorian technology. "Take us deeper into the system," Corax ordered. "I want to get a closer look at their primary military installation." As the Valdorian fleet moved inward, their sensors began picking up more detailed information about human space activities. The asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets showed signs of extensive mining operations. Several space stations orbited the gas giants, apparently harvesting fuel from their atmospheres. For such a young species, the humans were surprisingly industrious. "Admiral," called out sensor technician Vrock, his voice carrying a note of confusion, "I'm getting some unusual readings from the human vessels." "What kind of unusual?" Dr. Zenth asked, moving over to examine Vrock's displays. "Well, sir, their hull configurations don't match anything in our database. The metal composition appears to be some kind of adaptive alloy that shifts its properties based on environmental conditions. And their energy signatures—" Vrock paused, checking his instruments again. "Their energy signatures are fluctuating in patterns I've never seen before." Dr. Zenth frowned. In 4 centuries of studying alien species, he had encountered every type of spacecraft design imaginable. Young civilizations always followed the same basic principles: solid hulls, fixed weapon systems, conventional propulsion. What Vrock described sounded like something far more advanced. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Dr. Zenth ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're looking at." While the scientists worked, Admiral Corax focused on the tactical display. The human vessels were spread throughout the system, but they weren't arranged in any recognizable military formation. Instead, they seemed to be engaged in routine civilian activities: cargo runs, research missions, and patrol duties. If this was humanity's idea of a defensive fleet, they were even less prepared than the Empire had assumed. Contact established. Admiral, announced Communications Officer Threx. We're receiving a transmission from a human vessel identified as the UES Prometheus. Their commander is requesting permission to approach for first contact protocols. Corex was impressed, despite himself. Most primitive species either fled in terror or made aggressive moves when faced with a superior force. The humans appeared to be taking a diplomatic approach, which suggested at least some level of wisdom. Grant them permission to approach, but keep weapons locked on them. I want to speak with their leader. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be a human command bridge. The being who faced them was smaller than a Valdorian, with only 2 arms and a face covered in strange flexible skin, instead of proper scales. Despite the alien appearance, there was something in the human's eyes that reminded Corex of a veteran military officer. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus, the human said, her voice translated through the Empire's universal communication system. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our solar system. We've been hoping for this day for a long time. Admiral Corex stepped forward, allowing the human to see his full impressive stature. I am Admiral Corex of the Valdorian Empire. We have come to evaluate your species for potential integration into our galactic civilization. Captain Chen smiled, an expression that Corex found difficult to interpret. We appreciate your interest, Admiral. Would you be willing to meet in person? We have a diplomatic station at the edge of our system that would provide a neutral location for discussions. The request was reasonable, and Corex saw no harm in accommodating these primitive beings. Very well, Captain. We will meet at your station in 6 hours. As the transmission ended, Dr. Zenth approached the Admiral with a troubled expression. Sir, I've completed the analysis of their ship configurations. The results are concerning. How so? Dr. Zenth activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of the human vessel Prometheus. The ship appeared to be roughly cylindrical, but as they watched, sections of the hull began to shift and reconfigure. Weapon ports opened and closed in different locations, sensor arrays extended and retracted, and the entire rear section seemed to be redesigning itself. The ship is rebuilding itself even as we watch, Dr. Zenth explained. The hull isn't just adaptive, it's actively intelligent. Their power systems are integrated into the structure itself, creating redundancy levels that should be impossible with their level of technology. Corex studied the display with growing unease. Are you saying their ships are alive? Not alive in the biological sense, but they display properties of both organic and artificial intelligence. Admiral, according to our physics models, what we're seeing simply cannot exist. The energy requirements alone should be beyond anything a species this young could generate. Then our models are wrong, Corex stated firmly. Continue monitoring their vessels. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with before we meet with their representatives. Over the next few hours, as the Valdorian fleet moved toward the designated meeting point, their sensors detected more anomalies. Human. Ships throughout the system were performing maneuvers that defied conventional understanding of space travel. One cargo vessel appeared to phase partially out of normal spacetime, allowing it to pass through an asteroid that should have destroyed it. Another craft was somehow generating its own localized gravity field, permitting it to make turns that would crush any normal crew. Admiral, reported Navigation Officer Ilex, we are approaching the human diplomatic station. It's not what we expected. The view screen showed a structure that looked more like a work of art than a space station. Crystalline spires twisted around a central core, with docking bays that seemed to grow to accommodate incoming vessels. Energy patterns flowed across the station's surface like living lightning, creating patterns that were both beautiful and somehow unsettling to Valdorian eyes. Their architecture doesn't follow any known engineering principles, Dr. Zenth murmured. The structural integrity should fail under the rotational stresses, yet it appears to be perfectly stable. As they docked with the station, Admiral Corex found himself facing a possibility he had never seriously considered. Perhaps the humans weren't as primitive as they appeared. The Valdorian Empire's classification system was based on technology, levels that had remained constant throughout galactic history. Every species followed the same developmental path, because there was only one efficient way to harness the forces of physics. But what if the humans had found a different way? The docking bay they entered was filled with a breathable atmosphere that somehow perfectly matched Valdorian requirements, without any prior communication about their biological needs. The artificial gravity felt natural and comfortable, adjusted precisely to what would make their species most at ease. These weren't the accommodations of a primitive civilization scrambling to impress their superiors. This was the hospitality of a species that understood their guests' needs better than they understood them themselves. Captain Chen was waiting to greet them, accompanied by a tall human male who introduced himself as Engineer Marcus Torres. As they walked through the station's corridors, Corex noticed that the walls themselves seemed to be watching them, with subtle patterns of light that tracked their movement. "Your station is quite impressive," Admiral Corex admitted as they entered a conference room that appeared to be carved from a single massive crystal. "Thank you," Captain Chen replied. "Marcus designed the adaptive architecture. We've found that buildings work better when they can think for themselves." Engineer Torres smiled at the compliment. He was a young human with dark hair and bright eyes that seemed to hold secrets. "The station actually grows as needed," he explained. "Right now it's configuring new sections based on your crew's requirements. By tomorrow it will have areas perfectly suited for Valdorian physiology and preferences." Dr. Zenth leaned forward with scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. "How is that possible? Your species has only been in space for a few decades. The technology you're describing requires centuries of development." "We don't develop technology the same way other species do," Marcus replied. "Instead of building machines that do what we tell them, we create systems that can learn and adapt on their own. Our ships, our stations, even our tools, they're all designed to improve themselves over time." "That's impossible," Dr. Zenth stated flatly. "Truly adaptive technology requires quantum-level processing power that no young civilization could generate." Captain Chen exchanged a glance with Engineer Torres before responding. "With respect, Doctor, I think your assumptions about young civilizations might need updating. We've discovered that when you give machines the ability to evolve, they find solutions that fixed designs never could." Admiral Corex felt a chill run through his scales. The Valdorian Empire's dominance was built on technological superiority that had remained unchallenged for 2,000 years. Their weapons, their ships, their industrial capacity, all of it was based on perfected designs that had proven their worth across countless conflicts. But perfection, by definition, couldn't improve. And if the humans had created technology that could improve itself, perhaps, Admiral Corex said carefully, you could show us some examples of this adaptive technology. For scientific purposes, of course. Captain Chen smiled again, and this time Corex recognized the expression. It was the look of a predator who had just realized her prey had walked into a trap. "Of course, Admiral. Marcus, why don't you show our guests what the Prometheus can really do?" As they walked toward the station's observation deck, Corex began to understand that this first contact mission wasn't going to follow the usual pattern at all. The humans weren't primitive beings grateful for the Empire's guidance. They were something entirely new in the galaxy, and their technology might just change everything. The game was about to begin, and for the first time in centuries, the Valdorian Empire wasn't holding all the cards. The revolution spreads. 3 weeks had passed since Admiral Corex's first encounter with human technology, and the Valdorian Empire was in crisis. Emergency sessions were being held in the Imperial Council chambers on the capital world of Valdoria Prime, where the greatest minds of the Empire struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. "The footage must be fabricated," insisted General Thrax, his deep blue scales bristling with agitation. "No species develops faster than light communication in their first century of space travel. It's physically impossible." Dr. Zenth activated the holographic display for the 100th time, showing recordings from their encounter with the human ship, Prometheus. The vessel had demonstrated capabilities that violated every known law of physics. It had folded space around itself, created temporary wormholes, and somehow transmitted information instantaneously across vast distances. "I've analyzed every pixel of this data," Dr. Zenth replied wearily. "It's authentic. The humans aren't just building ships that adapt. They're building ships that rewrite the fundamental rules of reality around them." Emperor Valdonis himself had come to observe the emergency session, his ancient silver scales marking him as one of the oldest living members of their species. For 800 years, he had ruled an empire that spanned 1,200 star systems, built on the foundation of superior technology and military might. "How many human vessels have we detected?" the Emperor asked, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Approximately 300 ships throughout their system," Admiral Corex reported. "But the numbers are misleading, Your Majesty. Each human ship appears to be capable of functions that would require an entire fleet of our vessels to accomplish." The Emperor's large black eyes fixed on Admiral Corex with intensity. "Are they a threat to the Empire?" Before Corex could answer, Communications Officer Vex burst into the chamber, his scales pale with fear. "Your Majesty, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human ships have appeared in 17 different systems simultaneously. They're making contact with our client species." A stunned silence fell over the council chamber. The Valdorian Empire's strength came from carefully controlling the technological development of subjugated species. Client races were given just enough technology to serve the Empire's needs, but never enough to threaten imperial dominance. "What are the humans telling our client species?" Emperor Valdonis demanded. "They're sharing technological specifications," Vex replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Construction plans for adaptive hull designs, quantum communication systems, and self-improving artificial intelligence. The client species are already beginning to modify their existing ships." Dr. Zenth felt his heart racing as the implications became clear. If the client species gain access to human technology, they'll no longer need imperial protection or guidance. The entire foundation of our civilization will collapse. The revolution spreads. 3 weeks had passed since Admiral Corex's first encounter with human technology, and the Valdorian Empire was in crisis. Emergency sessions were being held in the Imperial Council chambers on the capital world of Valdoria Prime, where the greatest minds of the Empire struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. "The footage must be fabricated," insisted General Thrax, his deep blue scales bristling with agitation. "No species develops faster than light communication in their first century of space travel. It's physically impossible." Dr. Zenth activated the holographic display for the 100th time, showing recordings from their encounter with the human ship, Prometheus. The vessel had demonstrated capabilities that violated every known law of physics. It had folded space around itself, created temporary wormholes, and somehow transmitted information instantaneously across vast distances. "I've analyzed every pixel of this data," Dr. Zenth replied wearily. "It's authentic. The humans aren't just building ships that adapt. They're building ships that rewrite the fundamental rules of reality around them." Emperor Valdonis himself had come to observe the emergency session, his ancient silver scales marking him as one of the oldest living members of their species. For 800 years, he had ruled an empire that spanned 1,200 star systems, built on the foundation of superior technology and military might. "How many human vessels have we detected?" the Emperor asked, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Approximately 300 ships throughout their system," Admiral Corex reported. "But the numbers are misleading, Your Majesty. Each human ship appears to be capable of functions that would require an entire fleet of our vessels to accomplish." The Emperor's large black eyes fixed on Admiral Corex with intensity. "Are they a threat to the Empire?" Before Corex could answer, Communications Officer Vex burst into the chamber, his scales pale with fear. "Your Majesty, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human ships have appeared in 17 different systems simultaneously. They're making contact with our client species. A stunned silence fell over the council chamber. The Valdorian. Empire's strength came from carefully controlling the technological development of subjugated species. Client races were given just enough technology to serve the Empire's needs, but never enough to threaten imperial dominance. What are the humans telling our client species? Emperor Valdonis demanded. They're sharing technological specifications, Vex replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Construction plans for adaptive hull designs, quantum communication systems, and self-improving artificial intelligence. The client species are already beginning to modify their existing ships. Dr. Zenth felt his heart racing as the implications became clear. If the client species gain access to human technology, they'll no longer need imperial protection or guidance. The entire foundation of our civilization will collapse. On the distant world of Kepler 442b, a species called the Thessians were experiencing their first taste of freedom in 3 centuries. Captain Zara Kell of the human exploration vessel New Horizons stood in the center of a Thessian engineering facility, watching as their technicians struggled to understand the blueprints she had provided. "Your ships are beautiful," Captain Kell told Chief Engineer Motho, whose feathered crest displayed colors of excitement and wonder. "But they're built to Valdorian specifications, designed to be limited. What we're showing you will let your vessels reach their true potential." Motho examined the holographic display showing adaptive hull technology. His people had been building starships for the Valdorian Empire for over 2 centuries, always following rigid design specifications that prevented them from developing anything too advanced. "These modifications would make our ships autonomous," Motho observed. "They could improve themselves without external programming." "Exactly," Captain Kell confirmed. "Your people are natural engineers. You shouldn't be building ships to serve someone else's limitations." As the first modified Thessian vessel launched from their orbital shipyard, something remarkable happened. The ship's AI immediately began optimizing its own systems, improving efficiency by factors that shouldn't have been possible. Within hours, it was outperforming imperial specifications by margins that would have taken the Valdorians decades to achieve. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On Proxima Centauri C, the reptilian Zothans were integrating human, quantum communication systems into their mining vessels. The insectoid Klaxons in the Vega system were experimenting with self-repairing hull materials. Even the peaceful Eritans were building ships that could think and adapt. But it was on the world of Altair 7 where the real revolution began. Commander Xeris of the Altarian Defense Force had spent his entire life watching Valdorian patrol ships enforce imperial law in his home system. The Altarians were an old species, one of the first conquered by the Empire 800 years ago. Their advanced civilization had been systematically dismantled, their people reduced to manufacturing goods for imperial use. When the human ship Defiance arrived with Captain James Morrison at the helm, Commander Xeris saw an opportunity his people had been waiting centuries to seize. "Your patrol schedules are predictable," Captain Morrison observed, as they reviewed Imperial fleet movements. "The Valdorians follow the same routes, use the same tactics, and rely on the same technology they've been using for 1,000 years. Their ships are still superior to anything we can build," Commander Xeris replied, his 6-armed form hunched over tactical displays. "Superior by their standards," Morrison corrected. "But they're built to fight enemies who think like they do." What happens when they face ships that can adapt faster than they can react? Within days, the first human-modified Altarian vessels were ready for testing. They looked similar to traditional designs, but underneath their familiar exteriors, revolutionary changes had taken place. Their hulls could shift configuration during combat, their weapons could modify their output based on target analysis, and their AI systems could learn from each engagement. The test came sooner than expected. Imperial Patrol Squadron Gamma 7 was conducting a routine inspection of the Altair system. when their sensors detected unusual energy signatures from several Altarian vessels. Squadron Commander Thylex ordered the ships to submit to inspection, following standard Imperial protocol. "Altarian vessels, this is Imperial Command," Thylex transmitted. "You will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded for compliance inspection." The response that came back was unlike anything heard in Imperial space for 8 centuries. "Imperial Command, this is the Free Ship Liberation," came the reply from Commander Zaris. "We decline your inspection. Altair 7th is no longer subject to Imperial authority." Thylex couldn't believe what he was hearing. Client species didn't refuse Imperial orders. It simply didn't happen. "Altarian vessel, you have 10 seconds to comply or we will open fire." "Then open fire," Zaris replied calmly. The Imperial ships launched their attack with devastating force, enough firepower to obliterate a dozen conventional vessels. But as their weapons struck the Altarian ships, something impossible happened. The enemy hulls absorbed the energy, analyzed the weapon signatures, and immediately began adapting countermeasures. "Sir, our weapons are having no effect," reported Thylex's tactical officer. "Their shields are adapting to our frequency patterns faster than we can modify them." Before Thylex could respond, the Altarian ships began their counterattack. But instead of using conventional weapons, they employed tactics that defied all military doctrine. One ship phased partially out of normal space, allowing Imperial fire to pass harmlessly through it before rematerializing inside the enemy formation. Another vessel split into multiple smaller units, each one thinking and acting independently, while maintaining perfect coordination. Within minutes, Imperial Patrol Squadron Gamma 7 was destroyed, their wreckage scattered across Altarian space. Commander Zaris transmitted the battle recordings to every client species in the galaxy, along with a simple message: "Freedom is possible." The news reached Emperor Valdonis within hours, carried by the Empire's fastest courier ships. For the first time in his 800-year reign, the Emperor faced the possibility of Imperial defeat. "How many systems have declared independence?" he asked Admiral Corex. 47 and counting, Your Majesty. The rebellion is spreading faster than our fleets can respond." Dr. Zenth studied the tactical reports with growing amazement. "The client species aren't just using human technology. They're improving upon it. Each engagement teaches them new capabilities. Every battle makes them stronger." "Then we must strike at the source," Emperor Valdonis declared. "Assemble the Imperial Grand Fleet. We will eliminate the humans before their influence spreads further." But as the largest military force in galactic history prepared to attack Earth, Captain Sarah Chen was already implementing the final phase of humanity's plan. The Prometheus and 200 other human vessels took positions throughout the galaxy, not to fight the Imperial fleet, but to ensure that human technology would survive whatever happened next. "Are you ready for this?" Engineer Marcus Torres asked as they watched Valdorian ships massing for their assault on Earth. "Ready as we'll ever be," Captain Chen replied. "The Empire thinks they're facing a primitive species with lucky technology. They have no idea what humans are really capable of when we set our minds to it." The Prometheus activated its quantum communication system, sending instantaneous signals to every modified ship in the galaxy. The message was simple: "Remember what we taught you. Think for yourselves. Adapt and overcome." Across 1,000 star systems, ships that had been built to serve began to think for themselves. The Valdorian Empire had spent 2 millennia creating the perfect galactic civilization, based on order, control, and technological stagnation. But humanity had introduced something the Empire had never encountered: the idea that technology should evolve, adapt, and improve itself. And once that idea was loose in the galaxy, no force in the universe could contain it. The final battle was about to begin, but the outcome was already decided. The age of static empires was ending, and the age of infinite possibility was about to dawn. As Emperor Valdonis led his grand fleet toward Earth, he had no way of knowing that he wasn't just fighting humanity. He was fighting the future itself. And the future, as humans had always known, belonged to those who could adapt and change. The Empire was about to learn that in a universe of infinite possibilities, the species that could imagine the impossible would always triumph over those who couldn't imagine anything new at all.